right. Welcome back, folks. Welcome back. And like I said, we have a good episode. And if you liked us talking about the Israeli dude, talking about aliens, and how that is coming out during a specific time, and even Trump talking about it, and the Galactic Federation, if that sounds interesting to you, well, the guest today is exactly the right guest to have. Omar, why don't you give him a proper introduction?
Yeah, definitely. So on today's show, we have Isaac Weishaupt. He is the host of the Conspiracy Theories and Unpopular Culture podcast. He also runs IlluminatiWatcher.com. That's IlluminatiWatcher.com. He's also an author and a lot of other cool stuff. Follow his social media. We'll go over there on Instagram, Isaac Weishaupt. And so we just like to bring him on board today so he can talk a lot about the Great Reset, this whole Rona thing, aliens, a lot of, just
and
probably get into
how is that related, right?
Yeah, how's that related? How does that all work? Everything pretty much.
Right,
so
pretty much,
this guy knows it all. So, and if he doesn't, I'm sure he can research it and he'll get back to us.
You get back to us, exactly. Welcome to the show, Isaac. How you doing, man?
Welcome, man.
What's up, guys? My pleasure to be here. And as you allude to, if there is something I do not know, I'm very clear that I'm not the guy. So I don't aim to like buffalo people. There's enough of that in our truther community that we got to be very careful about what we say and do. So yeah, cheers.
Yes,
thanks for having me on.
Yes, indeed, man. So, like I just said, or I was telling you earlier, I bought your book. You just released Aliens, UFOs, and the Occult, User Illusion 1. I know you're already on 2, working on that real quick. And I heard that book. I got it on Audible. And I went to work, and I consumed that whole book. It's about 5 hours worth of content on that book, and I was just like, wow.
His third eye reopened, and he messaged me telepathically.
I was like, wow, this is insane, man. It was funny because I was telling Omar, if I were to look at our show, and if I say, what do we talk about, and try and condense all of the, over 100 hours of podcasts that we have, a lot of that stuff was in your book, and then with some more detail, So I was like, this is perfect. You know what I mean? And I was like, I need to get this guy on the show. And luckily, I emailed him. And even though we're not a very huge podcast, he was like, let's do it without question, which I appreciate. That makes me feel good inside and warm and in the Christmas spirit, So
yeah, man, it's all love, dude. That book was. I am in fact working on the second book. Just to be clear, the second book, User Illusion 2, is going to be basically just film analysis of various films that I'll be talking about the symbolism behind them and the hidden messages and the predictive programming and how it relates to the alien agenda, and specifically about how it fits into the theories laid out in Use Your Illusion 1, which I originally was going to publish both of these the same day, but given the events of 2020, things were heating up very fast. Disclosure was coming down fast, and I said, you know what, I got to get this first book out here because I don't want this. And look, I'm not saying like I'm predicting the future. Like I'm just reporting on the content and news and media that I consume on a daily basis. And I'm saying, to me, it's very clear that we're headed down the path of a different understanding of the phenomenon and what it means and where they want to take this. So I wanted to release this book as soon as I could, Use Your Illusion 1, because some of the theories and ideas in there, I believe they'll hold more weight when they are in fact proven true over time, or at least co-opted by what we're gonna be surrounded by in the next few years. Like I say, I think a lot of the ideas, some of the more controversial, sensational ideas in the book, like when we talk about adrenochrome death cult, like that stuff that I think is going to be 5 to 10 years down the road. Like it sounds crazy, but like. I'm going to shoot my shot here and say that's kind of what we're looking at, I think.
And we haven't talked about adrenochrome much on the show, and by those people that might not know, that's cults that are drinking people's blood, pretty much, right?
Bill Clinton is what's keeping him alive.
Bill Clinton is what's keeping him alive.
Well, yeah. Ironically enough, like that there's a thing called parabiosis, and that's this system where you use the blood of the youth to repair aged tissues and regenerate tissue, which,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of this Dracula, Elizabeth Bathory sort of ideas of using the youth to stay eternally young, because it's kind of like the plot from Prometheus, right? Like these elites, they get old and they've got all the money in the world and all the power, but unfortunately, their bodies are breaking apart. Second law of thermodynamics, and they want to kind of find a way past that, which takes us into the realm of the occult and their fantasies of immortality, which supports these ideas of the adrenochrome stuff, which got really sensationalized in 2020 with, you know, Wayfair conspiracy theories about them smuggling kids and, you know, the pizza stuff. I don't want to use the wrong trigger term to get you guys banned.
Right.
You know, all that stuff. It fits into this adrenochrome theory.
Yeah, there's a lot of real hard science actually that goes into that. There's a lot of not just theories, but there are a lot of practices too, scientific methods that'll actually use, you know, people from young blood. There's a what is it? Maybe like 2 years ago. Yeah, I believe 2 years ago, a year ago, they used blood from a young mouse. You know, they broke it down and they injected it. They created a serum and they injected it into an older mouse, and they could see literally the older mouse be restored internally through their organs. And so there's, you know, scientists actually doing the work to make this possible.
Right.
And I don't know. I think those guys already have found it out. Not the scientists themselves, but the occultists, you know.
Yeah, I definitely had heard about the adrenochrome, and then I looked, you know, I think I had just finished looking into it a little bit of a rabbit hole, and then I watched the part 2 of like what was it? The Shining. What was it called? That movie?
Shining?
The second movie? Do you know, Isaac?
Dr. Sleep.
Dr. Sleep. Yeah.
Oh, no, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. So, anyways, Ewan McGregor reprises the role of the little kid in the first movie with Jack Nicholson, and he pretty much still.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. I mean, The Shining, yeah.
Right. So the whole movie is based on like there's this like secret cult in the back, like in the that, you know, they're dying and they need to, you know, pretty much scare the living crap out of kids and other people with psychic powers and absorb their blood and their energy, and they become young, and then they actually get a kid and they sacrifice him in the movie, and
they made a movie of that?
Yeah, it's the whole thing. And then I was like, wait a minute, it's crazy because like, yeah, it might be sensationalized, but like that whole thing is kind of like in your face sort of thing. And when you kind of start researching it in a scientific level, it fits with the occult stuff that you see in the movies, which is the scary part, you know? And that's the part that I think you kind of investigate the most. Isn't that right?
Yeah, man. In fact, let's geek out on Dr. Sleep for a minute, because I did a show on Dr. Sleep back in, I believe it was, man, I don't even remember, December 2019 or something like that. And because at the time I had read the book, but I had not seen the movie yet. And in the book, and let's back up. So Dr. Sleep is basically the sequel to The Shining. Most people have seen The Shining or read the book. And Jack, the boy from The Shining, is now an adult. And as we saw in The Shining, he's got these powers of The Shining. And in the storyline for Dr. Sleep, he's an adult, but there's also this group of vampires called the True Knot. And the True Knot, they have to stay alive and stay youthful, kind of like a vampire would. They have to kill children. They have to pull their soul out in the form, they call it steam in the story. Right. But they basically kill kids to stay young, essentially. And what's curious is that in the book, I later saw the movie, but in the book, the main Danny, did I say Jack? That Jack's the dad. Danny, the boy, who's now an adult, he is palling around with a young girl who also has the abilities of The Shining. Her name is Abra, which obviously it's a play on abracadabra, because like everything, I think there's elements of ritual magic in this stuff. But Abra, she touches a baseball glove on the ground that belonged to a boy who the True Knot vampires already took and, you know, killed him for his steam. And she says in the book that she touches the glove and she can sense the presence of what happened there. And she said that these these vampires had the lizardy thoughts, which ties nicely into David Icke's arguments about, because David Icke's been talking about this for a long time. He's been talking about the Archon shapeshifter lizard people who need the fear as a form of sustenance to manifest into our world. And it sounds bizarro, and I don't know that I buy it, but curious enough, it shows up in the storyline. Now, what's really weird,
like
is
Monsters
that,
Inc.
Yeah, just like Monsters Inc. Exactly, and you see this in lots of stuff. And I'm very well versed in Stanley Kubrick stuff. I wrote a book called Kubrick's Code. A Clockwork Orange has they go to a milk bar and they lace the milk with drugs, and one of the drugs is called adrenochrome. You also see this storyline kind of embedded in Lolita, another Kubrick movie that I covered. But the strangest thing, if you look at The Shining, when I did Kubrick's Code, you can see that when Jack is at the Overlook getting ready to like take over while everyone that works there is packing up and heading out of town, he's reading an issue of Playgirl magazine, which was very strange. Like, why is this guy, first off, why is there an issue of Playgirl magazine just sitting around in the Overlook?
Right.
Then second, why is Jack Nicholson's character Jack, why is he reading this magazine? Then the third thing that's odd is if you zoom in and you look at the cover, there's a story about incestual abuse of children. Now, to add even more strangeness to this, when I watched Dr. Sleep, the film, there's a moment where Danny, he's working at a nursing home, and if you freeze frame it, it's very quick, but I've got borderline OCD. You can see that he's reading the same exact issue of Playgirl magazine that his dad was reading, and it's no part of the storyline. It's just there. And it really makes you wonder, like, maybe, right? Like, this is, it's almost like Hollywood is telling us over and over, like, there's this abuse of children. There's this idea that the elites are trying to, remain young, and they can do it through some kind of method of, harvesting fear or blood or something atrocious with children. And in the Alien book, I sort of go into that because you see this theme and it occurs over and over, and I can basically tie it into the realm of the occult and what I believe to be is the alien agenda and where they're headed with this thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of ritualistic magic that takes place obviously with blood and even milk, breast milk, things like that, things that pretty much are used to sustain life. There's a lot that goes into that. Man, that's really interesting. What else did you find out in your many lookings into?
Well, to talk about the blood as the life force, like Aleister Crowley, who's kind of like one of the most infamous occultists of all time, he wrote about using the blood of a young boy he had a Gnostic ceremony for this religion he created called Thelema. And as part of this Gnostic mass, they had a mock communion. It was like a mock Eucharist. And the communion wafers consist of a few things, and one of which in the Book of the Law, he calls out as the blood of a young boy, and he said that the victim, what did he say? Something about a child of perfect innocence and high intelligence is the most suitable victim to be used for this, right? To put the blood into this ritual. Well, disturbingly enough, if you read through the architects of the new UAP disclosure movement, the new rebranding of the UFO phenomenon, you've got people like Tom DeLonge, Freemason from Blink-182, and he wrote a book with Peter Levenda, who some claim he's an occultist in his own right. I don't know if that's true. I don't think he's ever come out and confirmed that he's a member of any of these ritual magic groups they allege him to be in. But he's written many books on the occult, and he 100% knows what he's talking about. This guy is super impressive. I've been trying to get a hold of him to do my show for many years, and with no such luck. Very smart guy. He definitely knows what he's talking about, if nothing else. Well, they wrote a book called Secret Machines Gods. And this book is part of a rolled out sequence, a multimedia sequence, where they're going to explain to the masses what's going on with the UFOs and the aliens. This consists of 3 nonfiction books. It also consists of some fictional books for the kids, and it consists of some movies to consume. And you see this strategy with like I did a few shows on Kobe Bryant when he passed away in early 2020, and I read all of he wrote some kids books, and I read them, and I was shocked at what I read, because Kobe Bryant did a similar thing. He had a multimedia venture called Granity Studios, and Granity in his alternate universe is a term for magic. And in the books, and people can listen to these shows. I did these shows on, I think it's called like Kobe Bryant Occult children's books or something like that.
Yeah.
And in one of the stories, this kid wants to be a better athlete, so they basically sort of sell their soul or give praise to the fallen angel and this fallen god, and it brings out this dark shadow side, but the child can use this to their advantage and become a better athlete. Then at the end of the book, she finds her uncle worshiping the same fallen god, and he's kind of like, yeah, this is a secret, don't tell nobody, but this is the way we do things.
So it's autobiographical, huh?
Maybe, man. I don't know.
It's like, you think these jumps were natural, bro?
You think these hoops
are
not supernatural, bro? Yeah, no. I remember you mentioned that in your book, User Illusion 1, where you're talking about the shadow, and it kind of connects to the duality and this other self, that you have to go, you have to suffer or be in chaos and come out, as someone else. And it kind of ties with all this Thelema stuff and occult things, and one person you mentioned, which I guess it was concerning to me only because someone that I like quotes him a lot, and I'm like, I personally like the work of Jordan Peterson. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's kind of exploded in the last 5 years or so, and but he quotes Carl Jung a lot, and he doesn't necessarily, I don't know, sometimes it's in agreement, sometimes it's not, but like even Carl Jung, and you talked about his mother a little bit and the connections to the occult, and I'm like, just even philosophers, it just seems like the occult permeates into philosophy. What exactly did you find with Carl Jung? And what I'm trying to get at is, I want people to understand that the occult, all this ritual magic stuff, it's like everywhere, in everything, not just the movies, but our science that we call, our knowledge, everything. Like,
Charles Darwin, man. I mean, he had a psychedelic trip while, on Easter Island. On one of those islands trying to figure out the whole evolution deal. Right. And he's like, he said, you can look into it, man. That's where he got his ideas from.
Right.
They were beamed into his head, evolution. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like you to talk a little bit about Carl and what you found with him and his situation with that.
Yeah, so Carl Jung he was a Gnostic. He was a psychoanalyst, right? And he was a Gnostic as well. And the Gnostics, they believe, and I'm going to sort of paraphrase and condense it. So I'm sure that there's different like sort of flavors of Gnosticism, but in general, they believe in the idea that God created mankind and put us on this prison planet to worship him. Right. God put our souls into these material prisons, these bodies, and the whole Gnostic sort of pursuit is to enlighten oneself, to go beyond the material realm and become God of their own right, or whatever they want to fill the blanks. But they believe in an inverted reality where the serpent, Lucifer, is really the good guy. So the good guy's bad, the bad guy's good.
Mm-hmm.
But Carl Jung, he subscribed to some of this stuff, but he always talked about the alchemical rebirth, and the activation of this archetype that was buried in the collective unconscious. And he thought that we could bring about this new world order, this new world view, by reframing our relationship with God or the divine or this cosmic consciousness or whatever you want to call it. And that's what the apocalypse is. The apocalypse means revelation, means to expose what has been hidden. And that's what, Carl Jung was into that stuff. That's what he wrote a book about UFOs, and he talks about like the mandala being a symbolic of a perfection, and that it fits into the UFO and the shapes of the UFOs. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't surprise me that Jordan Peterson, and I'm familiar with Jordan Peterson, but I'm not like an expert on it by any means, but I've heard of some of his stuff, and he seems to espouse a lot of the Gnostic ideas and the idea that God is a controlling God, and we've all been duped, and they believe that Christ is a perversion of the true mystery teachings and the true mystery school. And you see this with the Zeitgeist movie. They did a pretty good job putting that film together. And the whole part is about how the story of Christ was just a stolen version of the ancient mystery religions, and it's really all solar religion stuff. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we could that's an argument in itself that who knows, right? But there's enough holes to poke in the argument on Zeitgeist and the story of Christ that I don't know that I buy it. But,
I don't know. I don't know if you know. I think I mentioned this on the show that I had there's a time where I had left church because me and Omar both were actually in a very deeply embedded in a cult. We were not aware of it.
What's up?
Hey, what up? But once we got out of it, we started doing some kind of like really ancient biblical studies, like what does the Hebrew think? I mean, we went through the Bible many, many times, looking up its biblical scholar reviews, peer-reviewed stuff, And one of the videos that was kind of responsible for almost, making me atheist, because I saw that Zeitgeist movie, and I didn't know enough about the Bible for me to be like it kind of makes sense, I guess. But then I've heard you quote actually Christopher White or Chris White in his work, and he did a whole thing called Zeitgeist Debunked as well. Yeah. And that he dedicates himself to debunking stuff, ancient aliens and all that good stuff, right? And so he put everything in context, and it really just brought me back, and almost like, oh my gosh, I didn't know enough about the Bible for me to say that what they were saying was wrong, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And so, but for the people out there that know about this and they have those similar doubts, I highly suggest Christopher White's work, and you come to your own conclusions. But I it's one of those things. But yeah, Christopher, that Zeitgeist, I definitely seen that, and that was in many other ways a kind of an eye opener to different things. Yeah,
I agree, and I agree with everything you're saying there. And I'm not very well versed in the history of Christianity or the Bible. Like, those aren't my strengths. That's not my forte exactly. Because for me, I've always been I wouldn't say agnostic, but I've never really super felt compelled to believe in Christianity. I grew up in a Christian church, didn't really like it. But
what kind of a Christian church?
It was like a non-denominational church. So, we had the little band up on stage, and nice. I don't know. It just wasn't for me, man. I was like, dude, this is corny, man. Yeah. And I think most of that was because I was a young kid, and I was a teenager, and I was like kind of a hellraiser, and all these kids I'd go to church with, I couldn't identify with any of them. I couldn't buddy up with them because they were all super
goody two shoes.
goody two shoes. And I was like, get out of the way, Poindexter. Yeah. I'm gonna go find a chick to the devil music.
You're out in the back of the church smoking a cigarette. Hey kid, you want to try one of these? Oh no.
Were you that one guy on Saved by the Bell that holds a joint the wrong way, and then it's like, hey man, you want some of this, man?
Yeah, that's kind of but I've got that sort of foundational, I don't know, belief. I never felt comfortable enough to be like, no, this is all BS, and I don't believe any of it.
Right.
But I'm open to that argument. I just I haven't, and as as stupid as it sounds. Like, I haven't dug into it deep enough to be like, because I just interviewed Alex Tsakiris from Skeptico on my show, and he was like telling me, he's like, well, I used to be a Christian too, and then I read about Josephus and this whole story about how they don't know who wrote the Bible and all this and that, and I've looked into those in the past. I just haven't committed it to memory. But he challenged some of the Christian things, which I think is good for me. Like, I like to be challenged. I do want to learn more about my own faith, and now I'm an Orthodox Christian, and that church appeals to me more so. And maybe it's just because I got older. I don't know, but
it has a lot of structure. It's different,
Yeah.
It's like Catholicism light.
Light.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah.
But the occult fascinates me, right? Like, that's the darkness that pulls me in. Like, I just enjoy it, man. I enjoy reading about it. I don't practice it. In fact, I try to warn people about it. Like, hey, like, I don't know that this magical thinking and stuff. Like, I believe it works, man. Like, I question it, man. And I'm always of the camp of like, look, because I used to do some ghost hunting, and I've always been the camp of like, look, we're just mortal humans. We do not have the power of discernment to know what's like good spirits and evil spirits. And, I'm not saying that like, just because you're ghost hunting, you're worshiping the devil, but like, you just don't know what you're messing with, I think. And
did you ever encounter any ghosts?
Oh yeah, man. I saw enough that I was like, nope, I'm out. See you later. And, it was back in, some of my listeners are familiar. They've heard me tread this stories over and over, but,
well, our listeners and myself are not familiar.
Yeah, we want to know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, here you go. Let's do it. So back in 1999, I was in the military,
that was a good year.
right? And yeah, it was a good year. You could wear, all the guys dyed their hair blonde like Eminem. But a buddy of mine in the military was like into ghost hunting. I had no idea. I was like, what? I have no idea what you're saying right now. And he played the EVP tapes for me, and he explained the whole thing to me. This is before, they might've been on television, but I wasn't aware of it. And I was like, dude, you're blowing my mind. What are you talking about right now? And I went with him.
Everybody has that one friend.
Yeah.
That was him. And we went, he had this whole ghost hunter society he was hanging with. He was like, dude, we go ghost hunting every week. I said, bro, you guys are a bunch of nerds. What are you talking about? So I went with them.
That just sounds funny.
Were they all in jumpsuits? Like in flight suits with like with backpacks?
Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Like Heaven's Gate now. It was called the Utah Ghost Hunter Society. They might still be a thing. I don't know. Nice. I haven't looked into it in a long time. And because I was stationed out here in Utah, right? And we went on some ghost hunting trips, and I was hooked because I saw just a couple examples. We were in a school that was supposedly haunted. All the lights were off. It was very dark. There was a camcorder set up on a tripod with the back then, before everyone filmed everything with a phone, it was an actual camcorder with a little flip out screen, and you could watch the screen in real time as it recorded, and it just was pointed in no specific direction in this empty dark theater. And the guy's like, stand here and watch this monitor. You're going to see orbs floating around. And he explained to me what an orb was. I was like, okay. And sure enough, man, within, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes, now I've seen these orbs floating around. And I said, what the hell is this, dude? Then we got a bunch of audio on EVPs. My girlfriend's grandfather's name, which I had no idea. Like we were down in the basement, and he said his name, and I said, "Hey, do you know anyone by this name?" She's like, "Yeah, that's my grandfather that passed away." I was like, "Oh shit!" and then all kind. Then we've had electronic devices, like a monitoring system sort of thing, going off, and it was telling my girlfriend to go down to the basement, because there was one in the kitchen and one in the basement, and it was going off, and she looked at it, and she thought it was my voice saying, "Hey, come down here, come downstairs," and she thought I was home messing with her. I was out skateboarding with my friends, and she thought I had snuck in the house and was screwing with her, and she called my cell phone, and she was she was bugging out because she didn't believe me. She's like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "I'm over here skateboarding or whatever." And she was like, "Oh my god," I was freaking out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and there was more stories, and like it was because I was ghost hunting like regularly.
That's
with
what
these
happens,
guys.
bro.
You look
I
for it,
think
they
that's
will
what
come.
happens, dude.
Yeah.
Look at Zach Bagans, man, on Ghost Adventures. He's breaking down every week.
Didn't the guy who created the first ghost listening machine was an occultist? What was that, Omar?
Oh, maybe.
I forgot his name, but he also created the air conditioner.
Yeah.
Because he would get messages. He would get messages, and then so he on one of those messages, it was the air conditioner. Had the plans for it.
Yeah.
No joke.
And then later, whoever perfected the machine was receiving messages from him.
Yeah.
To make the machine better, and now you have these EDP machines or whatever, you know.
Interesting. Yeah. The I think it was like the Nazis invented the television as a way of like sort of trying to communicate with things.
Yeah, that's a whole show in itself, man.
And that's what I'm trying to. I mean, good way to connect back. What I'm trying to say is like a lot of this technology, in some way or another, is connected to occult scientists or some kind of. Is a ritual first, and really it's disguised as like, oh, this is an advancement in technology. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, and the reason I asked you, like, if about your ghost hunting stories and about, if you believe in ghosts, because Chuck and myself, we believe that that's a part of reality, the supernatural aspect. That's why that's one of my views as to why if evil exists, good has to exist. You can't have one without the other, And Chuck and myself, like we said, we were in that cult. We grew up in that cult. It was a Christian church, but it was very occultish in nature. And every Friday night, we would have deliverance services. So services exorcisms, pretty much. That's what the Catholics call it.
So between me and Omar, we exorcised
thousands and thousands of people,
of demons.
So literally, people would come to these services
that would practice the occult, witchcraft of different sorts.
People who were sick, people who had different ailments, people who who had bad luck, quote unquote, in their lives. And we would lay hands on them and we would pray for them, like in the name of Jesus Christ. Just like in the Bible, there's many instances of Jesus praying and casting out demons. That's pretty much what we did for lots and lots of years, and we'd lay hands, and it's real, man. Like people would come in normal, and then all of a sudden you put your hands on their heads and you say in the name of Jesus Christ.
You would see. I personally saw a 13-year-old little skinny girl lift up Omar, which is a guy. He's in his past 200 pounds, and lift him up like nothing. Like she had supernatural strength. Like definitely some of those were. I could say now in retrospect, some of those were probably like psychosomatic. People were just kind of like, yeah, really. But then they would tell you things about your future. They would tell you things about your past, about your family. Yeah. They would tell you what's going on right now. Yeah. They would tell you like things that person didn't know us.
Yeah.
And they knew
like
what happened.
Yeah, they would have their eyes open and they'd be growling and then look at you and say, he's like, I know what you did.
Yeah.
And then like, what do you mean? Oh, you know what I did? It's like, yeah, I know today you went here. You
did this or that. And you're like, what the heck?
Like, what? And that person you've never met in your life, or you've had some contact with them, but still, and
or they call you out. Like, let's say you were like doing something that's like quote unquote sinful, like in your own bedroom or whatever. And they knew they would
I know
you're cheating on your wife.
Yeah, I know you're cheating on your wife, and they would say the name of the lover.
Yeah,
and then that person would be like, "What?
I just got caught."
Yeah,
in
exposing.
Public.
Yeah, man. And so that's why. And so we have a history with that too. We have a history with a lot of that supernatural. You see people literally have like small women have the strength of 10 men. You'd see people just the most.
Or speak different languages that they didn't know.
Yeah, like people who speak Spanish.
Because this is primarily in the Mexican community or Latino community, so everybody spoke Spanish, Yeah. But sometimes they would speak different languages, or we would speak. I personally speak 4 different languages well enough to say things, and I would speak a language to them and they would understand me. And sometimes like, you're just like, what? This person doesn't speak that language. So it's like more than natural. It's like a supernatural being, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And sometimes they would come about and say, well, we were pretending to be this person's parent, you know what I mean? Or this person's family member that died, just so they can communicate with you like you said, you can't really tell who's good or evil. And we see this in horror movies all the time. Sometimes they pretend to be a family member and really it's just like this spirit, evil spirit or whatever. And that's how they got you because, I was like, oh, I want to talk to Grandpa so-and-so. And then next thing you know, you're doing occult rituals and now you're deep in magic. You know what I'm saying? And so,
we have a lot of experience with that. And that's why we believe it, man. Not just because we've researched it or whatever,
we read it.
But we read it some book. No, because we practiced occultism for many, many years, disguised as Christianity.
That's another thing. The church we were into later, we found out, started getting more and more into mixing occult rituals with Christian rituals, which kind of I don't know if you intentionally did this, but a lot of the stuff that you talk about in your book, it makes sense, which is kind of fits with this new world order religion that's coming, And
oh wow! So are you saying that the church that you were in believed in Christ, but then at the same time they were starting to use occult ritualistic sort of ideas at the church?
Yes.
Yeah. So what happens in Christianity, you have your mainstream Christianity, right? It's like everybody reads the Bible. It's like that church you went to with the little band on the stage.
Right.
Everybody reads the Bible and they read it and they take what from it and, they preach to you Jesus Christ died on the cross for salvation. Well, a lot of the churches that come out from, especially from Latin American community, it's all about culture, man. And so a lot of Latin American communities that come out of, there's still a lot of occult rituals left over, so they all became Catholic and then they mixed. So you have a lot of Catholicism. Okay. Yeah. So you have a lot of, when, all the conquerors came to Latin America, Mexico, and all those places, they became Catholic. They forced them to be Catholic. But then at the same time, in order to not lose their identity, they held a lot of their occult rituals. Mm-hmm. And so they mixed them. And you can see this,
Brazil,
you can see this in Brazil. You can see this in Haiti. You can see this in Mexico. And especially in the more rural places, you see it a lot. So you'll have like the narcos. They have the Santa Muerte, the Holy Death, right? So the Holy Death is just a reincarnation of the god of death.
Right.
100 years ago, the Santa Muerte didn't look like a statue of the Grim Reaper.
Right.
It looked like the Aztec god of death. But then sometime during the 60s or 70s, they changed it and they made it look like a death. And so a lot of Catholics still worship. A lot of Catholics mix the occult with Christianity. And a lot of Christian churches, Hispanic, Pentecostal churches, mix the occult with it too. So that's why they do these exorcisms.
Especially now with the Apostolic Reformation movement, they're really like mixing like very obvious rituals into Christianity. And they're passing it off as Christianity by using the name of Jesus,
Yeah, so they'll use these rituals to deliver, quote unquote, exorcise people, cast demons out of them, and it's all biblical, but it's used in an occult manner.
Mm-hmm.
And
they insert their
insert their occultish belief systems, So it's real, man.
Yeah,
we've seen it all, dude. We've seen absolutely what would blow any atheist or scientist's mind out of the way. People are like, well, everything is natural, the supernatural does not exist. I'm like, okay, buddy, come on over with me on Friday night to this church.
Let's go over here.
And
I'll show you a little something.
Yeah, I'll dare you.
That spirit will put you on blast, son.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a trip. Yeah, I'm with you guys on that. Where, I've got college degrees in science. And I'm not saying science is wrong. It's not the whole picture.
No, for sure.
And we've somehow, our society, our culture has put so much emphasis on science as that's the new dogma, that's the new religion. But to me, I think that the path it's going to take is, and this is something I read it a long time ago and it stuck with me. The path they need us to take is atheism through the dogmas of science. They need us to believe in it's just this big universe and we're not special human beings and there's aliens and all these other civilizations all over the place. How could there not be? I mean, you hear this all the time from like Neil deGrasse Tyson and all these supposedly revered scientists where it's like, well, how could there not be aliens? I mean, Look at the infinite stars and galaxies and planets, and it's like the world's teeming with civilizations. And I'm like, okay, first off, you're a terrible scientist because science, you're only supposed to go off of like what's real empirical data, and scientific method, and
Right.
and they're postulating, and I get it. I get where the idea comes from, but like it hasn't happened. So.
I personally call that Inception. I think that movie that Christopher Nolan made really was trying to tell us that they're incepting
predictive
the masses,
programming.
you know what I mean? Predictive programming, and you know.
Yep, they want us. They want us to, because all of the, like I lay out in the book, with the history of the occult and the desires of the occultist, Jack Parsons, Helena Blavatsky, Aleister Crowley, all these occultists we talk about in the book that for hundreds of years have been talking to spirits and channeling ascended masters and channeling alien entities and all this stuff. Well, it just so happens they also thought that, the worst thing that ever happened to man was Christianity. It was none of the other religions. It was just Christianity. It's the worst one. And that's the thing holding back all the progress.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that the way they want to lay it out is science is the new dogma. If you don't believe in science, you're just an idiot. And that will lead to atheism. But the problem is man is a spiritual being, because we all know that, consciousness exists. Rene Descartes kind of confirmed these things, that all we can know is that there's an observer, there's somebody home, there's a consciousness there. Yeah. So man is a spiritual being, so that will create this void when everyone becomes atheist, that will be filled by the occult religion, which will inevitably lead to Luciferianism. And this is the Gnostic fantasy that Lucifer and the serpent is the real God and the real benefactor to humanity, and God the Father just hates us and wants us to suffer here and worship him forever. And it's silly to me, because they can't switch it over straight to Luciferianism. They got to take this indirect route. I believe that's how they're doing.
Well, historically speaking, every time they tried to get rid of Christianity, it just exploded even more. So they're probably
you just can't push this. Going back to what you're saying, you just can't put the devil in front of somebody and say, "Hey, drink this, kid."
Yeah. Well, kind of like going back to what I said in Inception, if you kind of force an idea down someone's head, you're going to reject it. But like if you make them think that it was their idea, then the mind's open to receive it, and then you kind of create your own ideology from there, and you think, oh, this is my own. Yeah, we all think the same, and it's kind of like, no, you were programmed to do so. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of the ideas behind the predictive programming and what we've been observing in these movies, and in the book, I believe what we're seeing right now in the last 10 years is the disclosure of UFOs. They have to rebrand it to UAP because of the laws of propaganda here, because since the Robertson panel in 1953, they were trying to convince the public not to worry about UFOs and that there's nothing there, and it's all just crazy people seeing stuff. And that's, they rolled out the Robertson panel strategy through Disney, included all these movies to, sort of like sensationalize the idea of aliens. But now they've sort of flipped the script, and now you'll see, 90% of the media is controlled by 6 companies, and Disney's one of them. Disney owns History Channel, and they are reverse programming. They're doing UAP propaganda programming through entertainment via Disney and the History Channel. And that's what your Ancient Aliens shows are all about. That's why you've got, there's like 5, 6, 7 UFO shows on the damn thing now of, Skinwalker Ranch, and it's showing you all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And while I'm first in line to consume it, I think it's entertaining. I like it.
Oh, no, that's fun.
I'm here. I'm with you as well. I think one of the things that kind of blew my mind. What was that?
But you can debunk so much of it.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the version of events that we don't get.
Right.
And you referenced Chris White. He did that whole Ancient Aliens debunked thing. It's like 4 hours. Yeah. And it's ironic because I watched it many years ago, and it woke me up to like, holy crap, like this Ancient Aliens thing is a ruse.
Yeah.
And he talks about the paintings that the Ancient Aliens always reference, saying, well, look, there's a beam coming from a UFO.
With my first favorite orange man, George Tsoukalos.
Yeah. Yeah. They point to that, and I just heard it. twice I've heard that reference in the last 6 months because I've been really following, Jeremy Corbell, Joe Rogan, Luis Elizondo. I've been following them pretty closely, and twice I've heard that reference dropped about these paintings and how these are UFOs. And Chris White did a really good job of debunking that and saying, no, absolutely not. This is not the case.
Yeah, they did it. Yeah, they dropped a lot of that ancient alien references on that. I don't know if you heard it, that Joe Rogan podcast, the one we did with
Bob Lazar.
Bob Lazar.
Oh yeah, that's a great episode.
It is
by the way.
actually,
yeah.
it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Both of those episodes, the Bob Lazar episode, and then with the captain, Fraser,
Commander Fraser.
Commander Fraser. Ooh, that was really good. Fravor.
Yeah. Yeah, David Fravor, I think was his name.
Yeah,
those are really good.
Yeah, and I think I made it in the book, my critique of David Fravor, because I think he's part of this.
It is, yeah.
This psyop, this propaganda. Because if you listen to the show, here's why I question it. Because on the show he says, he claims, he's like, my wife's really into UFOs. Her mom's really obsessed with UFOs. And they would always ask me every time I went flying, hey, did you see a UFO? And I'd always say, no, but I'm looking for you. And then he sees a UFO, and then he lands, and they don't classify any bit of it. And they're just like, I don't know, go ahead and talk about it. So instead of him telling his wife and his mother-in-law, who had been obsessed with UFOs, and asking them after every mission, after every flight, if he's seen them, he doesn't do that. Instead, he's, weeks later hanging out at the bar with his other pilot buddies, and they're talking about the UFOs out in public, like, oh, whatever. And then I'm like, this doesn't even add up to me, right? Like, if I'm him and my family is always asking me about UFOs, and then I see one, who's the first person I'm going to call? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't add up.
Right. And then I think that what you mentioned the most, like, I mean, at the end of it, it's kind of like, I got to take it on faith because he said so. There's no video proof of it per se, and if I believe, if I'm not mistaken, right? He just said, "Oh, we weren't recording because it wasn't that kind of."
No, the other aircraft was recording it, and so that's the Tic Tac one. That's the one. So him and his pilot buddy were recording. No, they weren't recording.
Yeah, he said that they had been spotting these things for a while. Yeah. There's one video of it. I don't recall if that's the video from his aircraft or
no. I think that's the video, because there were 2 planes on mission that day, and so Fravor's didn't record it, but they were following it with their instruments, and then his buddy was the one that was recording it. So they're the one that were watching it go from so many feet all the way down.
Right.
Yeah, and he said that they had been spotting these things for weeks or whatever, doing these exercises, and they still did not fly with live ordnance. And I don't, what do I know? Maybe that's typical protocol, but I'm thinking, well, gosh, that sure would be concerning if they're seeing some unidentified craft. Like, we don't know what they are. I mean, from their perspective, I would be concerned that this is an enemy aircraft or enemy drones or something.
Yeah.
It just doesn't pass the smell test for me. and again, what the hell do I know? I'm not a Navy pilot.
Right. I got you. No, but, the Bob Lazar one thing I wanted to bring up, and connecting it back to your occult research a little bit, is some of the stuff that seems kind of unreal. Also, I've already seen it or heard it before in a Marvel movie. You know what I mean? And so, for example, one thing that you mentioned in your book a lot is the alchemy stuff and the turning one thing into another. What is it? What is it? Did they do the famous for something into gold? What is it? What's that line? Carbon into gold?
Oh, the transmutation and turning lead into gold.
Lead into gold, lead into gold, and that's kind of, there's a whole meaningful situation there. I heard your episode where you kind of broke down the symbolism in the second Black Panther movie, I think, second or first. I forgot which one. Or I don't even know if there's 2. The point is, you were talking about
just the first one. Yeah,
right, correct.
One of them. Yep.
And then you showed that the whole story of where he got his suit, the metal. I mean, the whole story of Black Panther I mean, you want to break that down first? I want to reveal it to people. I want you to do it. I mean, you have that research, I'm sure, in your head. But it just reminded me of things that when I heard Bob Lazar, I'm like, it's almost like I can almost connect this. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So let me make sure I understand. Are you wondering how Black Panther connects into Bob Lazar?
No. Just talk about what your research is on Black Panther, and then I'll just tell you what I'm thinking over here.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So one element that really, and this is a very controversial subject that we covered on my podcast, and I got a lot of divisive, heavy opinions on this, and rightfully so, is the idea of Black Lives Matter, the group, the organization. And the argument presented is that the founders of the actual, organization, Black Lives Matter, they are witches and they are pagans,
lesbians.
There's some truth to this, right? There's some truth to this. They subscribe to
Do you know who Jesse Lee Peterson is, Isaac?
Who's that?
Do you know who Jesse Lee Peterson is?
No.
Oh gosh.
He's this.
Look up Jesse Lee Peterson.
Savage Moments,
and just have a laugh, bro.
He talks about BLM.
Whether you're conservative or not, doesn't matter. Just have a laugh, bro. Listen.
And he refers to the founders of.
He's an older black gentleman.
He refers to the BLM creators as witches.
Witches and
he's like these big witches, lesbians.
The way he speaks,
just the way he says it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and this is all very like sensitive subjects, and I'm sympathetic to all these groups. So like I try to present the material best I can without trying to step on the landmines, but. The argument is that
it's fine, man. You won't hear us cry about it.
Okay, all right. Well, the real, I just don't want people to get misunderstood. My perspective.
No, yeah, for sure. No, yeah.
But the organizers behind this subscribe to a pagan diaspora African religion called Yoruba, which has been around for a long, long time. And in their defense, their argument is, look, we need Black Americans to understand that their roots, their real religion, came from the Yoruba religion, which is, like I said, is kind of like a pagan religion that's very similar to what you see and observe in Black Panther. And this is why Beyonce, she's also representing the same religion and showing herself as the goddess of water, Neruba, I think is the name. She's been doing that for years now. I've got many articles and shows on that. But I don't know. I watch what's the show? Iyanla Fix My Life or whatever, and she apparently is like a priestess in the Yoruba religion, and it's a thing, right? Like whatever, man. Like I don't care. Like that's what they want to do, whatever. But it's strange to me. I just find it odd that they're not extremely vocal about the religious element behind BLM. It's not crystal clear to most people. It wasn't to me, at least. I had no idea. Someone told me about it, and I was like, "Get out of here, really!" And they are admittedly Marxist, which to me, when you look at Karl Marx and what he was saying, he said that Christianity was in the way of progress, and it needed to go. And in fact, he thought that all religion needed to go, which puts it at odds. Which I don't understand how the BLM people can say, oh, we believe that all Black Americans should know about their real root religion, and then also, by the way, we're Marxist, and which to me by definition means you want all religions to go.
Well, they take the parts that they like.
Yeah. So like it doesn't really make sense to me, but whatever. But in the story, they have this alien technology that comes in on a meteor. And it's basically the key to evolution for mankind. It's called vibranium in the story. And it's like this, mysterious thing. They call it the gift from the gods. And you would use the users like you see it in the movie when they're flying their basically UFOs, their spacecraft. They're flying them around through mental concentration because they're sitting in the lotus position, through ritual magic, through mental concentration, through powers of the mind. Basically, these people can interact with forces that are all around us, all pervasive in the world, like this universal collective consciousness stuff. And the vibranium is connected to it. So you basically control this material on the quantum level through the mind, through quantum entanglement, through all this stuff. And this is kind of like what the Vril energy was that the Nazis were looking into. And it's all based on science fiction stuff that, took it a step too far. But it's, people talk about this as the chi or the force in Star Wars or the prana. It's this cosmic energy, and I'm not here to say like that none of this is true. I don't know. I'm just reporting to you what you see in the movie, and I assume that the connection here could be with Bob Lazar, because Bob Lazar he was working on a gravitational drive on this UFO, and the materials, he said, were not of this planet. And again, it's the idea that they present on Ancient Aliens over and over is this gift from the gods. The gods, the aliens, come down and they are trying to evolve man through these gifts. So you see these ideas presented over and over and over. And like the good example you provide with Inception, this plays a role in the subconscious and the mind. And you can see in the last 6 years, the opinions on aliens has changed 180 degrees. Now, if you don't believe in aliens, now you're the crazy one. And that I assure everyone that's not the way it was 6-7 years ago. Because I wrote a book, my first book 6-7 years ago, and I was on the other side of the argument. I was saying, look, we need to understand that extraterrestrials are a thing. Right. And because that was it's kind of a fringy idea back then, but now they've managed to flip it around, and they do this through entertainment, I argue.
That's the best way.
I mean, again, I think it's one of the many ways to infiltrate a mass amount of people. I was reading this book that one of our guests we had on, his name is Gary Wayne, and talks about his book he wrote is called The Genesis 6 Conspiracy. And he talks about the different religions and bloodlines of people that have been practicing these sorts of things for, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And one of their main things is to infiltrate what they call the 7 sacred sciences. And in doing so, they can kind of manipulate society to whatever it is they want, whether if it's like the hard sciences, whether it's music, whether it's psychology and all these things, which doesn't surprise me, because now what we're talking about, if people haven't really connected the dots, is we have like psychologists like Carl Jung. We have people that were Marxist. We have people that were actually like hard scientists in creating things that we use today as in our technology. All of them with connections to, in some way or another, occult beliefs. You know what I mean? And if that doesn't make it strange for people, if that doesn't tell you that there's something going on, I mean, it's not really a conspiracy. It's just like, dude, the facts are there. Like, these people were into these things. And some of them even give credit to these beings, giving them information. And I mean, to us, that's the oldest story in the book, literally. That's Genesis. That's the beginning of Genesis, we kind of believe that this is a ongoing thing with these fallen entities that happened in the Garden of Eden. I mean, we believe.
Are you familiar with that, Isaac? The Watchers, fallen angels. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
That's and that goes into some of that bloodline stuff. They think that, and I don't know, man. Like I kind of think that on some levels they do believe that there's a bloodline of Cain or a lineage back to these alien hybrids, the Nephilim, the Watchers, all that stuff.
There seems to be a lot of proof for that, but like what I told people in the episodes that we did about that, like even if none of this is true, these societies, these secret societies, they believe it to be true. You know what I mean? And they're acting accordingly.
And that's that's what really matters.
Right, because they're making these decisions that are affecting society based on these beliefs, And my biggest thing is I want people to know that the occult and this stuff is highly in the mix. It's not just, this is where science, this is where people is going. Like one of the things I found out, and I remembered a while ago, and you kind of revisited it in your book that you just released, was the moon landing. I like how you say in the beginning of your book, I'm not a flat earther, but I also don't believe the moon landing happened. You know what I mean? I love that.
Bro, is space even real?
Yes. So we were kind of like, okay, I like that little line, but you mentioned in the book that even the us going to the moon, like that whole thing was a ritual. You want to explain that a little bit?
Sure. And then real quick, before I forget, we were talking about the scientists and all that stuff. Helena Blavatsky, she wrote a book called The Secret Doctrine, based on other sort of ancient wisdom stuff. And it was all about, she was like one of the first to start talking about initiating the masses into this occult doctrine. Because before that, it was just only for those selected to be in on this little mystery religion thing. And with her, she wrote The Secret Doctrine, which was all about fusing ancient wisdom with modern science, because that's kind of what it was all about. And that's the argument that you see with, like, Blavatsky wanted to push a Luciferian religion through the United Nations, have a global religion, and all that kind of stuff.
That's very crazy to me. I don't think people normally think of the United Nations tied to any of this nonsense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think that they officially like endorsed that by any means, but that was her, and I think it was Alice Bailey were talking about this kind of stuff about establishing the global religion, and that's where all these truthers get these ideas from, and I don't think they're necessarily wrong, man. Mm-hmm. I think that there is an attempt to do this sort of thing.
Well, it's just like the moon. Sorry, it's it's just like what you said with BLM. It's kind of like we all have our own personal belief system, but it's impossible for your belief system not to bleed out into your own work, into your own way of viewing the world. So obviously, you're going to push those unconsciously or consciously agendas of your belief system onto others. Just like those two women.
I believe us to be guilty of that.
Everybody's guilty of that. If you say, "Oh, I'm non-biased," you're just a liar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
So you were saying about the moon? Sorry.
Oh, right. So when we go back and look at the history of space exploration, you have to understand that our early sort of pioneers in space travel and rocket science includes Werner von Braun, a Nazi scientist we brought over. It includes Jack Parsons, who called himself the Antichrist, and he was the one that established JPL and was the one who basically
the Babylon working.
NASA.
Yeah,
the Babylon workings. He was using Crowley's rituals of contact the Scarlet Woman through the Ala Mantra workings, which was the same ones Crowley used to channel the first gray alien called Lamb in 1918.
Grogu.
There's a rich history of this,
Stop it.
This occult stuff, right?
Right.
And all of these, I call them space nerds, Jack Parsons and Werner von Braun and all these types. They all were influenced by the works of science fiction, which told them what to look for. That told them that man needed to go back out to the cosmos. Mm-hmm. And they all subscribed to that in real life. They wanted going to the moon was more than just mankind exploring and making it off of Earth. It was an alchemical conjunction of the male energies of the phallus, the rocket, which is a penis, right? Mm-hmm. And it mates with the feminine, the lunar essence of the moon. It's a literal like an obelisk, right? That's what the obelisk symbolizes, is the phallus penetrating the womb. And this is a ritual you see over and over. You see it with the resurrection of Osiris ritual they conduct every presidential inauguration. It's gonna happen here in a month in January, where the president goes through a ritual just like they took the Egyptian pharaohs through, where they much like the pharaohs, they would take the new sort of prophet or whatever, the president for our case, into the dome of Isis, which is the Capitol building. Then he meanwhile, simultaneously at the Herodome, at the headquarters of the 33rd degree of Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, just down the road, they're doing this ritual to infuse the spirit of the new leader with the spirit of Osiris. And in the case of our presidential inauguration, the president comes out of the womb of Isis, the Capitol building with the dome. That's what that represents. And he comes out on the west lawn facing the Washington Monument, this giant phallus obelisk, built by the Freemasons and all that, which is, oh, by the way, 555 feet, which is above ground and allegedly 111 feet below ground, 666 feet. And it's all connected into this sort of bizarro idea of everything being a ritual. And some would argue, and I don't disagree, that 2020 in itself is a ritual on a massive global scale because it has all the elements of an occult ritual in it, with the masses facing and approaching death. That's what they do in the Freemasonic reflection chambers. That's what the Skull and Bones of Yale do, right? It's all about, you go in the coffin as part of the ritual. It's to confront death and be reborn into a new normal, as it were, right? That's what we're doing right now. And that's why
the Great Reset, baby.
The Great Reset, yeah. So, and that's the big argument that I go through on my podcast with the Great Reset shows. I've got like 4 shows on this thing with the Great Reset.
I've heard your first one.
Is this just, dumb luck? Does this happen at the same time that these technological innovations are sort of taking off and we've got the 5G and the Internet of Things and data collection? Or is this by design? It could be a mix of the two. I just don't know. I'm not privy to these meetings.
Well, rituals do work. I mean, they work because if not, the world wouldn't be the way it is.
Right.
So they work, obviously. There is some spiritual component to them, something that we cannot see.
You're not condoning them, but
we're not condoning them, but they work.
Right.
They are real as,
someone, I say that because someone messaged me because one time when they heard us on Canary Cry, and then you said something about, the rituals work, and then they were like, are you guys occultists? Are you guys probably? I'm like, no.
Yeah, they work, but don't do them because they'll literally take everything from you.
You'll have your wife thinking you're talking to them at your house while you're skateboarding. I'm kidding.
Right.
The last thing I want to ask you, we're coming up on our time, but I want to mention it because I posted about it and saying that I was going to ask you, and I don't want to not ask you, and then have some of our listeners say, but you said so, you know what I mean? And what's the deal with the monoliths, bro? What are you perceiving? What's going on? Because Stanley Kubrick been talking about monoliths for a while, and I don't know what's going on. I have a little, obviously we have a specific belief, but what do you think? What's going on with those monoliths, bro? Popping up all over the place in different places.
Well, they say that this was actually just a stunt, right? It was a stunt of there's some artists that were putting these out there. To me, it represents something different though, a little bit, or it could represent something different. It could represent, because it takes the mainstream media to pick this up to push it out into the subconscious of the masses. Like they decide what they will talk and not talk about.
Right.
Because I'm very obsessed with Stanley Kubrick's movies, I did an analysis on 2001: A Space Odyssey. I read all the books. There's like 4 books in the sequence, and in the books, it takes the film a few steps further. And in the film, you see the monolith represents the alchemical and enlightenment of man. That's what Commander David Bowman goes through. He goes to the space hotel there and he is reborn, literally reborn as the Star Child. And that's kind of how the film ends. But if you keep reading the books, 2010, 2061, and 3001, you find that the monoliths are guided by alien intelligences because they have evolved at a different scale than mankind, which I agree with. I think that's the case where the progression of things, incorporating technology into the body, will result in sort of like cyborg stuff, and then you keep going down that path of progression. Eventually, we all become digital consciousness. Like that's where they want to take us, and that's where the alien intelligences turn into in the books. And they are actually using the monoliths as an aid to evolution of different planets. And they increase the mass of the planet Jupiter to the point that it implodes and becomes a star brighter than our own sun. In the story, they call it Lucifer, which to me is the big, that's the big story. Like that's what all this is about. It's about Lucifer and these alien intelligences evolving mankind into something better, because Christianity has been holding us back this whole time. But in the storyline, David Bowman evolves into digital consciousness, and that's where we're all headed. That's the argument. And the monolith, to me, represents that on a global scale. They're showing these, and it's funny because those monoliths they're showing on the news, like they don't look anything like the ones from Kubrick's movie, which is odd to me, because in Kubrick's movie, they used the dimensions of 1, 4, and 9, which is 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared. It's a perfected, clearly not just an accident kind of thing is what it represents. So I don't understand why they aren't showing them as verbatim copies of the Black Monolith of 2001. I don't understand that, but to me, it's representative of where our minds are, where our global consciousness is, and they're sort of gauging it to see if we're accepting of the alien intelligences and the idea that man can enlighten and evolve past this, this prison planet they perceive.
So we can get ready, so they can finally show up, like in that article. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what they want. They want us to accept this and bring it on. And I don't know, man. I got a lot of reservations about that.
I know. I mean, us too. Trust us. We definitely have.
Personally, I can't wait.
I have friends that were like, I can't wait till the aliens come so I can go with them. I'm like, I don't know if you want to do that though, And well, there's so much that we didn't get to, like Blue Beam Project. I wanted to talk about that. The holograms and how they would fake an alien invasion. Klaus Schwab and the Stabbies. I wish he really did speak like when they make fun of Jim. Yeah, but he doesn't. So he just sounds more like a really old Schwarzenegger. Like, you know what I mean? That's what he sounds like to me.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and then because that would be funny just to hear him talk about like transhumanism, and since the consciousness goes to the digital, and then that'd be so hilarious.
While eating a bar of chocolate.
No, one thing.
Pyramid chocolate. What's it called?
I forgot.
Trafalgar or truffle? That pyramid shaped.
You lost me.
That pyramid shaped chocolate?
Toblerone?
Toblerones.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, while he's eating a Toblerone, bro.
The only reason I remembered that is because of Family Guy. When when that one gay guy is like eating a Toblerone. And then he's like, choo choo, next stop, my thighs.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah. So many things we didn't get to, but hey, folks, if you guys are interested in this and the stuff that I just mentioned that we didn't get to, UFO and the occult and the connection. Well, I'm sorry. What's the name of the book again? I'm messing that title up.
Let us know where the listeners can listen to, man.
Yeah. I've got lots of jump off points for the listeners. So the book is called Aliens, UFOs, and the Occult. Use Your Illusion 1. It's on Amazon. It's on Audible. I self-narrated it. In fact, it features a great Bill Gates voice that I do, which is worth the price of admission itself. And if they're not ready for that, if they go to IlluminatiWatcher.com, there's a Start Here tab. They can sign up for my email newsletter, and with that, I will give them a copy of my first book for free. In fact, I've got a little thing on the sidebar there. You can get 4 books of mine for $5.
Ooh, nice. Digital stocking stuffers.
Yeah. So like, there's a deal in that. Just to be transparent, like I'm not trying to be sales gimmicky. That would be if you sign up for my Patreon at patreon.com/IlluminatiWatcher. You sign up for tier 1, which is $5 a month. You get all my bonus content for the podcast, and then you also get The Dark Path and Kubrick's Code, which are 2 of my most popular books. The Dark Path explains this whole agenda from front to back. Very important book. I beg them, if they want to just sign up for 1 month and bail just to get the book, do it. Like, read the book.
Yeah.
I've got hundreds and hundreds of good reviews on Amazon.
Good idea. Actually.
It's all levels of intrigue. Whatever they want to get into, there's options for everyone.
Absolutely. That sounds good. Last thing I want to mention that I heard, Omar, he was on another podcast with like I guess the #1 downloaded Catholic podcast. I forgot what it's called, but you had a really good conversation with that guy. And I've never thought myself like a well-grounded Catholic was going to be talking about these things, you know. But he did an episode with him, and one thing he mentioned, kind of in passing, but I almost pulled over because I was like my mind exploded. Was Gnosticism? You know how they want to turn always like dealing with getting away from the material, right?
Yeah.
And that's why actually one of the reasons they do like sex rituals and defiling is because it's part of this physical body, and we're just it connects to that. But I almost never connected it to, that's why things that we had before technology, like music, CDs, tapes, 8-tracks, all of that turning digital, everything's Wi-Fi. It's in the spirit realm, bro. Everything's going from physical to spirit. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah, that's what that was kind of one of the alarming ideas that dropped out of my Great Reset research, which, like I said, is I got 4 episodes of this stuff.
mm-hmm.
And I think it might be on episode 2, which is only a Patreon only kind of thing. But the 4th Industrial Revolution that old Santa Claus Schwab there was talking about, he says that, the 3rd Industrial Revolution was going from like compact disc to MP3. You took a material thing, made it digital, made it spiritual, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to go the other way. We're going to make the spiritual turn material. We're going to take thoughts and ideas and manifest them into reality. And the examples he uses is stuff like 3D printing. So he's saying we're going to go the other way now.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, with the occult history and all this idea of ritual magic and all the ritual stuff that they talk about, I read further into that and think they're talking about unleashing the powers of the mind on the masses, and this whole idea of like digital avatars, transhumanism, all that stuff. That's going to be part of the 4th Industrial Revolution that's kicking off right now.
Dang.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dang.
That in like technology that they can make you think thoughts, send them to you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
all that stuff.
That Neuralink.
Yeah. There you go.
Hook me up.
All that stuff in that book that he released,
Nice.
bro. So I highly suggest you read it. All right, folks, stay tuned. Isaac, stay with me. The general public is about to listen to some good music.
Nice.
Yeah.
Tracks.
All right, here we go.